With the Sabres playing the Colorado Avalanche, let's take another look at the Bo Byram Casey Middlestat trade. But this time, let's look at Byram specifically and what his future entails for the Buffalo Sabres, if there is a future with the Buffalo Sabres. We'll tell you what we've heard, we'll tell you what he's doing this year, and what could be coming contract-wise for Byram. All ahead as we talk Sabres and Avalanche, coming up on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to a Thursday edition of the Locked On Sabres podcast, and thanks everybody for making us your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. You can watch the show on YouTube. If you would like to become a member of our Locked On Sabres text club, you could go to joinsubtext.com/Locked On Sabres to sign up, get your updates, give us some takes, whether it's a question, you could get that in as well. That's all available to you. Joinsubtext.com/Locked On Sabres. You can follow me on Blue Sky at Sneaky Joe, Twitter at Sneaky Joe Sports, and of course the podcast account is at Locked On Sabres. Sneaky Joe DiBiase on today's show. We've got a lot to get to on a game day. The Sabres after dark, right? Anything after 9 o'clock, I think, should qualify as such. I mean, at least 8. 9 probably should work. 9 o'clock against the Avalanche. The Sabres are big underdogs again. They're second of 3 tough road challenges. I did say I would not sign up for anything less than 4 points going into this trip, and they've already dropped 2. So they'd have to win back-to-back games against the Avalanche and the Golden Knights. Not optimistic that they've got that in them, but 3 would still be okay. Hold serve, keep going. Hopefully you can go on a run after this trip is over, or maybe they'll surprise us and win both of these games. So we'll talk a little bit about this matchup a little bit later on in today's show. The Avalanche featuring Casey Middlestat, who is not having a great year. He was having a better season the last time we talked about him when the Sabres blew that 4-1 goal lead at home, which really just felt like it set off the 13-game losing streak, even though it was in the midst of it. That game was horrific. That's where Dahlin got injured. I mean, it was maybe the night that everything changed. It was the night that they lost the season. You could. I don't think it would be dramatic or exaggerated to say the season was lost that night against the Avalanche, where they blew a 4-goal lead, and they lost Rasmus Dahlin all in the same night. That's where it ended. Middlestat, though, since then, still struggling for the Avalanche. He is having a tough campaign for Colorado. He got there last year and looked really good as their number 2 center into the playoffs. He was pretty good in the playoffs. This year started pretty well for him. And then, since the 8, 9, 10 game mark, he's been bad for the Avs. And they're now rumored to be talking about, should we go get Steven Stamkos from Nashville? They're back to trying to fix second-line center. It's been that poor recently for Middlestat. So their end of the Bo Byram Middlestat trade, not necessarily going that well. I want to talk a lot today about Byram. It's the Avalanche. He's on my mind. Let's talk about Byram. We'll talk about the matchup a little bit later on as well. But before we do that, we finally did it. First time this season, we cashed on the sneaky good parlay in the Sabres Stars game. We hit all 3 legs. We got the Stars on the money line. We were playing the emotional hedge angle of that game. We got the Jason Zucker goal. That was the thing that we were really chasing on that front. That was the toughest part of the parlay. A plus 1032 parlay cashes, and the moment Zucker scored, I knew we were gonna be home on that one. So we'll try to hit that again. Stay later on in today's show. We'll try to keep it rolling. I've got a less juicy parlay in terms of the odds today. It's a little closer to a sure thing, if you will, but not as big of a payout. I will say, New Year's Eve. If you're a member of our text club, you've already heard this story, so apologies for the repeat. But for the podcast listeners that are not, I had a New Year's Eve parlay that with buddies over, everybody's doing the same parlay. We're all have the same rooting interest, right? And somebody suggests, oh, well, let's put the Sabres plus a goal and a half in there. And I'm like, all right, fine. It was my least favorite of the 5. If it was me personally, it's the one I would not have put in there. I'm like, all right, whatever, fine. Sabres plus goal and a half. At least I'm getting a goal. And I did say before the game even began to everybody, like, I'm telling you what's going to happen here. We're going to hit like 3 of these legs. The 5th one was the Oilers game of that night, which was going to be later on. We're going to hit 3 of these legs, and we are going to be stressing with the Sabres down 1 in the final minutes, and they're going to pull the goalie, and we're not going to be able to breathe. And that's exactly what happened. The one leg we didn't cash, of course, was Sabres plus a goal and a half. And big payout for me. I don't often have parlays that have massive payouts. And that night I had one. And of course, bam, there's the empty net goal. Lost a huge parlay because of the Sabres empty net goal. So listen, tread lightly if you are going to bet on this hockey team right now or trust this hockey team in any context. So we're going to be returning to the emotional hedge angle a little bit later on. Let's talk about Bo Byram. Bo Byram, formerly of the Colorado Avalanche, has been pretty darn good for the Buffalo Sabres since he arrived at the trade deadline last year, once again going against his former team tonight. Bo Byram is in an interesting position for the Buffalo Sabres. There are a lot of different angles. I feel like this could go many different ways. Byram, this year, might surprise you. Here's a stat on Bo Byram. He is in 5-on-5 scoring only. I know, like, most of the charts you'll see, or like when Sabres broadcast put it up, you'll see actually because they're touting Owen Power. Even strength points in the NHL this year, Owen Power is 3rd. But Power has some points at 4-on-4 and 3-on-3. If you strictly look at points by defensemen at 5-on-5, when the game is 5-on-5, who has the most points for defensemen? Number 1 in the NHL is Quinn Hughes. No surprise. He's amazing. Arguably the best offensive defenseman in hockey. I would say it's Cale Makar, but if someone said Hughes, I wouldn't want to fight him too much. 2nd in the league is Bo Byram. Number 2 in all of hockey this season in points when the game is 5-on-5 is Bo Byram with 19 points on the season. And, of course, he doesn't play a lot of power play, which is why his point totals are not going to be up there with Dahlin's and the other top defensemen in the NHL. Byram's having a great season. Like, I don't really think there's much around it. Now, you got to know what he is, and there's a qualification, I would say, on he's having a great season. He is not this insane, great, shutdown defenseman that you just can't get a rush on. Like, he's a risk taker. He jumps up and plays. He likes to carry the puck. He likes to get involved in scoring chances. Like, that's his style. And he's going to give up a little bit more defensively because he plays that way. Although I would argue that that's going to be outweighed by the advantage of having the puck more often when Byram is out on the ice. So I'm not even as worried about, him in his own end. And I think he's fine in his own end. I don't think he's like elite at it, but I think he's fine. He's not crushing the Sabres. He makes some mistakes, and sometimes that ends up in the back of their net, but it's not happening with regularity to me, with enough regularity to make it like a huge deal. Evolving hockey on the season, his percentile rank at goals above replacement at his position, 72nd percentile offensively, 69th percentile defensively. So he's giving you very good results in that number, goals above replacement, expected goals above replacement as well. Loving Byram on that front. Actually, his expected goals above replacement is a lot lower than the actual. So maybe he's getting some breaks along the way. But I've been impressed. I think he's a great puck carrier. He's very fast. I'm actually a little surprised that he and Dahlin have worked so well together, because Dahlin is also somebody that likes to jump up, get involved in plays. I think they have shown good chemistry that allows each other to play that style. Because when you're playing with Matthias Samuelsson and you're Rasmus Dahlin, I could jump up in this play whenever I want because I know Samuelsson's going to be back there. When you're playing with Bo Byram, you gotta be more aware. You've got to be more alert, because there might be times where you want to be a little bit more aggressive, but your partner's already being aggressive. So you've got to be a little more conservative there, where he's jumping up on the left. So you've got to swing over to the right because there's more free flowing movement with Byram out there. I think they've done a good job of meshing together despite both wanting to be active offensively in the game. I've liked those two a lot. I would not split them up. So this year, Byram, it's going well. If you look at some of the other numbers on the season, he's the guy that I am locked in on tonight, by the way, for Sabres and Avalanche. 19 5-on-5 points, second in the league among defensemen, a 47.0% expected goals for percentage. That is third on the Sabres among defensemen. Dahlin's up at 53%. Connor Clifton is 47.6 in far fewer minutes. And also, by the way, way easier matchups. Byram down at 47.0. So he's been good. He's been very good for the Buffalo Sabres. I think he's giving them everything you would have hoped for. It's gone about as well as you could have hoped for when they traded for him. I do think, the idea that he was going to come in and put up massive numbers was maybe naive on my part and others that might have thought that upside was there. Because really, the reality of defensemen in the NHL, as I just kind of outlined with the 5-on-5 numbers, if you're going to put up massive numbers in the NHL to be a defenseman, you got to play number one power play. Like, you have to. You're really going to struggle. Putting up, Quinn Hughes leads the NHL in 5-on-5 points at that position with 20. Like, it's not going to happen enough for you. You got to stack those numbers on the power play. And Byram being on a team with Dahlin, he's not going to play number one power play. So his numbers are always going to be deflated a little bit than they might be on another team. If he was on, Utah or somebody that doesn't have an elite offensive defenseman and he got to play top power play, well, then 21 points in 38 games might look like 30 in 38 games instead. All that being said, the point totals aren't bad, right? Like 20 in 38 games, it's easily going to be a career high for Bo Byram. He's on a 45-point pace, and almost all of that is even strength. 45 points, it's solid. That's a very good defenseman, playing over 23 minutes a night. He's being relied upon. And again, he's not getting them killed when he's out there. He's consistent enough defensively for me to really want the Sabres to re-sign him. I would absolutely re-sign him if I'm the Buffalo Sabres. Now, the question with Bo Byram, to me, is not about how good he is. He's good. Maybe you would have hoped he could be elite. I don't think he's elite. He's very good. Will he be here long term? That's a massive question that is not an automatic yes. And we should get to next why it's not an automatic yes. A weird comment by Elliot Friedman that we have mentioned on this show, combined with some trade rumors about what the Sabres might be interested in and them being open to certain things. Let's get to Byram's future, because that is very up in the air, in my opinion. That next here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Stick around later on for our sneaky parlay for tonight's game. All those odds and that bet will be courtesy of FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here. We are just over a week away, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action this weekend with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel, so many ways for you to pick up a W. Love betting on touchdown props, over-unders on yardage is always good, especially this week. If you feel like you have a strong opinion for Buffalo, those odds are not up yet, but they will be, on who's going to play a lot, who you don't think is going to play a lot, who you like amongst their backups. Then you can check out an over-under prop like Ray Davis this week for the Bills. I think he's probably going to play a lot. And when that number comes out, whatever it is, I'm going to want to hit that over. That's my #1 favorite for the week in football. So FanDuel, check it out. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. The Sabres and the Avalanche tonight at 9 o'clock. Former Avs defenseman and current Buffalo Sabre, Bo Byram, who's been very good for the Sabres this year. He is on the final year of his contract that was signed with Colorado. He is getting $3.85 million per year. It was a 2-year deal, and he will be a restricted free agent this coming summer. Restricted free agent. But he is 1 year away from being eligible for unrestricted free agency. So if he wants to play the game with the Buffalo Sabres of Sam Reinhart did this, right? Or was thought to have done this. I'll sign with you, right? I'm not going to hold out, but I'm only signing a 1-year deal. I will only talk to you about a 1-year deal because I would like to test unrestricted free agency next year. And that, of course, would be an indication of I don't want to stay here long term. Here is where we're at with the Sabres. It's a reality. You have to assume anybody without a local connection might want to go. It has to at least be thought of as a possibility. So, complete guessing, speculation. I don't know what Bo Byram thinks of it here. Maybe he loves it. Maybe he loves the city. He has friends on the team, right? He's close with Dylan Cousins and Peyton Krebs. So that could also influence why he might not want to go. He maybe could think differently than me because he has not sat through a playoff drought for 13 years, by the way. Maybe he thinks, oh, I don't think we're that far away. I think we are close to turning a corner. I'll stick around. I'll sign a big money deal. If they'll overpay me even, like, okay, I'm into that. I'll stay. Completely possible, reasonable. There's also a reasonable alternative that Bo Byram, who has been deep in the playoffs, has won the Stanley Cup and absolutely knows from playing with Nathan MacKinnon, who is a psycho competitor, that will yell at teammates if they're eating improperly, will yell at them if, the hold them accountable, if they doesn't think they're working hard enough, if they're not performing well in a game. Bo Byram has been in a Stanley Cup winning organization whose standard is winning deep in the playoffs, not just even making the playoffs. The Avalanche standard is going deep in the playoffs. He knows what it's like to be in a real winning organization. And if the Sabres organization is as poor as we might think it is, that their reputation is, then a guy like Bo Byram is going to think that it's a joke downtown. Not the city, the team, or the way things are run, the way it's run with the arena, facilities, I don't know. He might think it's a joke compared to where he had been. And he knows what it's like on the other side. I made this point a lot with guys that are here. Tage Thompson or Dylan Cousins or any of these guys, they can have guys come in and they try to represent what it is like in winning teams when a Connor Clifton comes in from Boston or when Alex Tuck came in from Vegas. And those individuals can try to replicate where they came from. But when you're a Tage Thompson or I don't need to pick on him, anybody that's been around here and only here, Jack Quinn, JJ Peterka, you might not actually know what it's like to live the other life. Byram does. And if he wants to go back to that, or if he doesn't think that the Sabres will ever get to that, then he's got leverage. He has got the ability to get out if he wants. He could tell them 1 year and I'm out and I'm not signing a long-term deal. And to me, I would have no qualms with him if he said that. He's a competitor. If you're a legit competitor in today's NHL, then you should absolutely think about wanting to get out of here the way things are. So I hope that's not the case. I hope I'm wrong. But I absolutely think it's possible that he would want out. Now, what Elliot Friedman said a couple of weeks ago, which we have mentioned here on the show, is none of what I just said. None of that. It is more to do with Byram and his role, which I think is fine, by the way. Like, I don't think he is a legit number one defenseman in the NHL. Maybe the 5-on-5 number should represent that maybe he is. Because, again, if he was on the power play, number one power play, maybe he'd be closer to a point-a-game player. Byram is playing over 23 minutes a night, though. That is easily the highest of his NHL career. He is, to me, the number two defenseman on a team that already has another guy that is capable of being a number two defenseman in Owen Power. He's the number two. And he's playing on the top pair with Rasmus Dahlin. And he is getting second power play minutes. So I think his role is fine, but Friedman said a couple weeks ago that what he has heard is that Byram would like to be a number one defenseman on his team. And he's got to know, well, if that is his number one priority or close to it, that's never happening here. You're never topping Rasmus Dahlin. That's not happening here. He's the captain. He is a better overall defenseman, and he's going to get those number one power play minutes. And maybe that's really all it is. Byram wants to get paid like anybody would. If I'm his agent, what would I tell Bo Byram? Well, your best path to getting paid big is to put up big numbers, big points. So to do that, let's get you to a team where you're the number one power play defenseman, where you're the number one offensive defenseman, and that's your role. Because then, instead of 45 points, maybe you'll put up 65 points, and instead of getting $7 million per year, now we can maybe start getting you in the $9 million per year territory. If that is important to him, if that is doable in his opinion, maybe he searches for that path. I'm taking a leap on a lot of this. A lot of this is exaggeration, but to me, all of these things are kind of why this is an interesting situation. Because we don't know where Byram's going to go. We don't know where his mind is. We don't know if he wants to stay here long term, if he's ready to sign at a moment's notice in the offseason. We don't know if the Friedman blurb is more accurate and that's kind of a setup to we're going to have a departure here at some point in the next year, that this is a short-term relationship between Bo Byram and the Buffalo Sabres. So, we can only wait to see if we hear more, if they were to sign him, and how his season continues to progress. But I like the player a lot, and I really hope the Sabres prioritize him and try to get him done. And if it takes an overpayment, that if he says to them, I want to put up big numbers so I can get the big payday, I want to be an $8.5 million a year defenseman, then the Sabres might have a decision to make. They might have to say, well, we'll pay you that. We'll pay you as though you're putting up those numbers, because we're not, they wouldn't say this to him, but we're not an organization that really has a lot of leverage in these situations. So if you want 8.5 and the market you think we'll only give you 7.5, then we'll pay that $1 million premium because we're the Buffalo Sabres. That's where I'm at. I would do that. If I had that opportunity, if I was Kevin Adams to make a decision like that, I think I would side with, I would be willing to overpay Bo Byram because he's a very good player. I would not want to lose him. He's still super young at 23 years old. I would not want to part with that player at all. I think he's been very good. All right, timeout here. When we come back, the Sabres and Avalanche matchup, my sneaky parlay of the day, and we're getting another backup goalie in this matchup. So good news for the Sabres on that front, at least. That when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by Gametime. Love going to live events. I'm already looking at concerts for the summer, and when I'm looking on Gametime, and for Bills tickets as well. Any of the live events near you, the energy, excitement are going to be unforgettable with these playoff games coming up. Now, Gametime's made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out all the fluff, shows you only incredible deals on great seats. So you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Went to a Sabre game a couple weeks ago where we walked up to the arena not with tickets. We're going to buy them closer right to puck drop, and right outside the arena, right before, bam, there they are. They're right in your app, and you're able to get in within a moment's notice. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Wrapping things up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast with a preview of tonight's matchup between the Sabres and the Avalanche. Sabres after dark. For you texters, 9 o'clock puck drop. I will be sleeping through the game and then waking up very early tomorrow morning, probably about 4:30 in the morning, and jump on the treadmill, and we'll be watching the game tomorrow morning. So no spoilers. No, just kidding. I will not look at the text club tonight while the game is going on if I'm still awake, because I'm going to watch the whole thing tomorrow. Actually, we'll see how it goes, first period or whatnot. Anyways, For tonight's matchup, we're looking for our second parlay hit in a row. Let's get on a run, and hopefully the Sabres can start a run here as well. I will be very impressed, though, if they are able to outplay this team tonight. The Colorado Avalanche are one of the most talented teams in hockey. They are no longer one of the deeper teams. They are much more top-heavy than they were a couple of years ago when they won the Stanley Cup. But that top, it, to me, is the most talented one. It's definitely 1-2, the most talented duo between Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar. I think it's the most talented trio in the league when you throw in Mikko Rantanen, who is one of the most proven goal scorers in the league, maybe a little underrated. I don't like to throw that word around because everybody in every sport everywhere is underrated. I think Rantanen is legitimately underrated. In hardcore hockey circles, he isn't, but he is a star of the league. And sure, yes, he gets the benefit of playing a lot with Nathan MacKinnon, which helps a ton. But this guy has scored in the last 3 seasons, and it's not even 3 full seasons because we're not even halfway through this year. This guy has scored 120 goals. Like, he is 55, 42, 21, and he's still got half a season to play. Like, he is as consistent a goal scorer as it gets in the league behind, like, the elite guys like Austin Matthews. Like, he's right after that. In fact, maybe Matthews is like the only guy you would put ahead of him as in terms of a pure goal scorer in the NHL. Draisaitl and maybe Sam Reinhart are worthy of being thrown into that tier as well at this point. So Rantanen is a great player, and the Avalanche are a great team. Middleset, again, struggling as of late, and they will be going with a backup goaltender tonight. Scott Wedgwood, former Rochester American. He actually was the guy that came in relief when the Avalanche put that comeback together during the 13-game losing streak against the Sabres. Wedgwood went in, and he did not allow a goal after he was in. So he is a career AHL guy, but he has kind of been thrust into the backup role for Colorado this season. And with some other struggles in that, he actually has played pretty well in limited action. 6 games he has played. He has a .932 save percentage. Very strong. He's only allowed 11 goals in 5 starts. Very good so far in terms of a backup. But he is a backup. And I find it hard to believe that he's not gettable, that you could not get him on a night and put 4 or 5 behind him, even without a ton of chances. So that's one benefit the Sabres have, but I expect them to be outplayed heavily in this game, and it's going to take a strong effort from Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. It's going to take a lot of gritty shifts, blocking shots, scoring on the rush, and hopefully getting 1 or 2 on the power play and winning the special teams battle. That is how the Sabres win a game like this tonight on the road in Colorado. So, with all of that being said, for tonight's game, and no lineup changes, at least from what we know at this point in time. Maybe that changes in the pregame warm-up, but we'll see. For tonight's game, I've got my sneaky parlay, and let's look at the odds first. The Avalanche are favored -200 on the money line. The Sabres +164, over-under goals is 6.5, with the over being -122 and the under being an even +100. Leg number 1 for my sneaky parlays, we go for a second in a row. I'm going Avalanche on the money line. We're going right back to the emotional hedge for this game, and I think Colorado's the better team. I think they'll win the hockey game, but I'm not doing the plus goal and a half on this night. -1 goal and a half. Over 6.5 goals, Wedgwood in goal, and a very talented Colorado team. I think we're going to get an over 6.5 for tonight's game. And then I'm going to go Yuri Kulik to record 2 or more shots. He got 2 shots last game. He is playing center, and he's a shooter from the center position. He likes to fire it on net. Kulik, I think, is going to be 2+ shots on goal, which is minus money. All of these were minus money, so that does not give you a huge payout, but it does make it more likely. +292 is all we're going for tonight. We're going to try to cash in a second in a row. We're not going to go crazy. 10 to win 29, 100 to win 290, so on and so forth is your sneaky parlay for tonight's action. And we'll talk to you tomorrow after it's over, and we'll see what we get between the Sabres and the Avs. If you got a thought on Bo Byram, what you think is going to happen here, what you would do contract-wise for the Sabres, we'll talk about it as the year progresses here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Next episode also, I want to talk about Devin Levi because he is going off in Rochester right now. 9 of his last 10 he's won in Rochester. So Just give you a little update from down on the farm and the World Juniors, plus Sabres Avalanche. All ahead on the next show. Be sure to check out Joe Marino with Locked On Bills ahead of the New England finale on Sunday for the Bills. And also check out Steal and Flip Locked On Fantasy Hockey for all your tips and tricks as the week progresses here in fantasy hockey. That'll do it for us on the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.